But yeah, he really has a message, and I sure appreciate you all for coming today to hear Jake. I haven't heard his whole story, but I've got bits and pieces from, another meeting, and welcome, Jake.
You're not the host, Jake.
Hey.
I'm really, really nervous right now. So I'll just get that out of the way. I want to read something out of the big book. And it's just a little short sentence. It says, these allergic types can never safely use alcohol in any form at all. And I'm going to tell you what happened to me and what it was like, what happened, what it's like now. I'm the middle kid. I got an older sister and a younger brother. My parents divorced really. I don't even remember my parents being together. They divorced early on. My dad was in the Army. He went to Germany, so my mom was left to raise 3 kids by herself. And I have a brother younger than me. I might have already said that. Anyway, so, I'm sure it was really hard trying to raise 3 kids. I was the middle kid. And for as long as I can remember, as long as I can consciously remember having thoughts, I've always had a little voice inside my head that told me that I wasn't quite good enough, that I didn't measure up, that I was an outsider, and I didn't belong where I was at. And I've always been uncomfortable, and I always wanted to be somebody else, and I wanted to be somewhere else, and I wanted to be doing something else. As long as I can remember, and I don't know where that comes from or why. And but that's the way it's always been for me. So anyway, my mom, she's trying to raise 3 children, and eventually she starts dating, and she brings a boyfriend into the house, and the boyfriend is abusive to me and my brother, not my sister. And then he moves out, so that's just, starting to build on these feelings of inferiority that I have, and then, we didn't have much, we kind of poor. And so I went to a different school every year. It seemed like every year I was at a different school until I was in the 8th grade. And I went to the 7th grade and the 8th grade, the same school 2 years in a row. And I repeated the 2nd grade, so it's a different school every year. And the 2nd grade was 2 different schools in the 2nd grade. But anyways, in the 8th grade, my brother, who's about a year younger than me, he was in the 7th grade. I was in the 8th grade. And we went to spend the night with a friend of ours. And he lived with his grandmother, and it was a rural area of Rutherford County. And so we had some money. Somehow or another, we had a few dollars. I don't know how much money we had. But anyway, we walked up to the store. It was probably a 5-mile walk up to this convenience store. And then, as 13, 14-year-old children, really, we stood outside the store and just asked people to buy us beer. We had the money, and after it seemed what might have been several hours, somebody took our money and went to a different store and bought us a case of beer. And so we took that case of beer and we walked back to this guy's house, his grandmother's house, and there was 3 of us, and there was a case of beer. And we drank every single one of those beers that night. And that was my first experience with alcohol. And I drank alcoholically the very first time I drank. And 2 things happened that night. One, I got terribly sick. The world was spinning. I was throwing up. It was just awful. The other thing that happened is that little voice in my head that told me I wasn't good enough and that I didn't fit in and I don't belong. That voice shut up for a little while. And I was able to be okay for a few minutes. For a little while, I was okay. So the next morning, I slept outside. And the next morning, I woke up and 2 things happened. I was terribly, terribly sick. The next morning, obviously, I was hungover. And the other thing that happened was that I knew that as soon as I was right then, that I would do it again the next time I had an opportunity to do it. And like I said, we were really young, by my standards, I guess I was really young. I was 14 years old, my brother was 13, so we didn't have a whole lot of opportunity for a lot of drinking and stuff. So, but the next year, I went into high school, and so there's more opportunities for drinking when you get to high school. So what happened is that I found that group of people that would go camping on the weekend, and when I say camping, I mean we didn't even have a tent. We was going out in the woods to drink beer by fire, and so we would just drink until we passed out and sleep on the ground, and then get up and go back to our homes or wherever we went the next day. So it wasn't camping, but we called it camping. And every time I ever drank, I just drank so much that I got sick. I mean, I could never regulate. It seemed like I could never regulate the amounts of drinking that I'd done. And I can remember one night we was in this little shack out in the woods, and there was a pool table there. And I was drinking, and I remember thinking, like, I feel perfect right now. I remember that feeling. I was like, I feel absolutely perfect. If I could feel this way forever, that would be awesome. And so what I've done is I slammed 3 beers to try to maintain that perfect feeling for a long time. And I mean, y'all can imagine how that worked out. I ended up throwing up out the window of my buddy's car. So I just, I just loved it so much that I couldn't, my ability to regulate it was very poor. Anyways, and I'm just going to briefly touch on when you go camping with those guys. Eventually, they're going to bring some dry goods, and also I really love dry goods also. But fast forward a few years, I dropped out of high school in the 12th grade. I got a job. I got married, and something pretty monumental happened. And so I was 20 years old, and my brother was 19. And he had to go to rehab because he was drinking too much. And so, I'm very uncomfortable all the time. And the only way I can be comfortable is if I get loaded. And just to be okay, slightly okay. And so when my brother had to go to rehab because he was drinking too much, and then he'd come back from rehab and he didn't drink at all, he didn't smoke at all, he didn't hang out with me at all, he wasn't very fun as far as I was concerned, and he didn't do none of those dry goods. And in my mind, the way I processed that was that the only thing I ever found that made me okay in the world, my brother went away to rehab because he drank too much. They took everything away from him. Not just the alcohol, they took everything away. That made me really scared. So I said, I'm going to quit drinking. I'm not going to drink. Because I don't want to have to go to rehab and lose everything that makes me okay in the world. And what I found out is the only way I can quit drinking at that point in my life is to really increase my dry goods consumption. Because something's wrong with me. The book tells me the problem centers in my mind. Something's wrong with my mind. And so it goes on like that. And I'm, so now I'm married, and I'm working, and I'm trying to juggle this, being loaded enough to go to work and not draw attention to myself, but not being so loaded that I lose my job for it, and being just trying to balance this thing out, and I'm just not very good at it. And at some point, my wife asked me to stop, and I did. It was like 2 years into marriage. I stopped, and what happened for me was after about 7 days, I was a nervous wreck, and I went to the 5th floor in Rutherford Hospital. That's a psychiatric unit. So I'm, 22 years old. Stopped for the first time. and I really, really wanted to do better. I really did. And so I went to the psychiatric unit, and I wasn't honest with them, and I don't think I was even capable of being honest with myself at that point in my life. But anyways, I went to the psychiatric unit, and when I got out, I really wanted to do better, and so I didn't know I didn't know nothing about meetings, and I don't know how that escaped me because my brother went to meetings, but we tried going to church, and like I said, I really wanted this to work, and I threw myself into church, and I was just giving myself 100% over to this, and I really wanted to do better, and make this marriage work and have a decent life. And, after about 2 months of that, somebody I worked with at the time, they gave me some dry goods, and I went home and I felt relief like I had not felt in 2 months. I mean, it was just, I knew something, I just knew that I was okay then. So then I was just back off and running again, and then I started peppering in alcohol again, and I'm just constantly trying to find that balance. And what happened was that she asked me a few years later to quit again, and I tried to quit again, and the exact same thing happened. I quit for about 7 days. I wound up in the psychiatric unit, but this time when I got out, I didn't even try because I knew, right? I'm not okay when I'm not altering my state of mind, whatever degree that is. So that's just my life, and I was working. I've been moving around a lot of different jobs, just moving from job to job. Sometimes I just wasn't a good worker. I wouldn't show up. If I didn't feel like going to work, I didn't go to work. And if you do that enough, they'll let you go. And sometimes, like I said, I'm from Rutherford, and so sometimes the mill was shut down and I'd draw unemployment. But anyways, I had a job, and this is at the end of the 90s and the beginning of the 2000s. And, I was going to work one day, so intoxicated that I could barely hold my head up. So what happened is, when I was pulling into the parking lot, my truck flipped the building a little bit, like just a little bit with the bumper. I was going to turn in, and I misjudged it, and I hit the building with my truck. And somebody seen me do that, and then they called HR. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to be honest with you, I was really mad at that guy. I mean, it felt like it was his fault that I got fired from that job. I mean, that's a real true story. But anyway, so I did get fired from that job, or I quit seconds before I got fired. I can't really remember. But anyway, so now it's just me and my wife in this trailer out in the woods, and she's as bad off as I am. So it's not good. It's not a good scene. Imagine that. Anyways, that marriage dissolved, and it wasn't like a real pretty, friendly, we're going our separate ways. It was, violence and name calling and going to court and going to jail, and all the good things that happen when we part ways. And anyways, I had a cousin in Charlotte, and he kind of knew what was going on, so he said, well, I'll get you a job with us in Charlotte. He said, we can hide work, and it's not an issue. You don't have to take a drug test. And I was like, sounds like a perfect job. But we had a guy that worked there named Shaky. If he didn't have a couple of beers before he got to work, he'd be shaking so bad he couldn't draw on a piece of towel. And the boss man knew it, that's his name, Shaky. So told me he didn't get that name from showing up to work every day, and I believe him. So, that was the people that I had found myself tied in with, and so I had to make a living. So I went to Charlotte, and I worked with these folks, and everything they told me was true. And so I'm working, and I get on my feet a little bit, and I move out, and I get a little duplex, and things are going all right. Still not really, I'm not okay, so I've got to always be a little bit off, get either a little drink or a little something on the side or a little mixture of both, just to kind of be all right in the world. And So this thing that happened, and it really changed the whole dynamics a little bit. And just, I know I'm not supposed to talk about it, but I started IV drug use, and I'll leave it at that. And it was really revolutionary. It changed my life. It really did. And about the same time, this girl turned up pregnant, and she told me it was my baby, but she also told somebody else it was their baby, and I knew she was doing it. So these are the people I'm associated with, you know. And so what happened is that, you know, I started missing work, and then I would go to work, but I wouldn't be able to get out of the truck and work, or I would go to work and work a little while and go to the Porta John, and I wouldn't come back from the Porta John for 45 minutes. You know, eventually I showed up to work one day, and the boss man said, "We don't need you no more." And so he said, "Go sign up for unemployment," and I did. And so now everything, all those barriers are out of my way, and I can really let loose and be comfortable the way I want to be comfortable. And I lost the apartment, I lost the job, my friends are falling off, I'm losing them left and right. So I ended up staying in this house on the west side of Charlotte. It was that girl that got pregnant. It was her mother's house, and it wasn't a good place. I slept on a little mattress on the floor of the upstairs bedroom, and there was another guy that slept beside me on a little mattress on the floor. And I can remember one night I woke up in the middle of the night because I had to get up in the middle of the night and do something, or I'd be sick when I woke up. And I remember he always kept a 40-ounce King Cobra at the head of his bed. He told me, he's like, "I got to get up in the middle of the night and have a drink, or I'll be sick when I wake up in the morning." And I was doing the same thing, but I remember I felt bad for that guy. I was like, "Man, that's sad." I was doing the exact same thing. I felt bad for him. But anyways, what happened is I was so out of it one day. I was sitting on the couch, and I was preparing some dry goods, and I was just so out of it. My cousin come in, and I don't know if this is what really happened. This is what they told me happened. My cousin come in, and she said, "He's in bad shape, and somebody needs to let his mother know. And if y'all don't, then I will." I think that's what they said. Anyways, just to let y'all know how deplorable I am, on a Sunday, I left to go buy some liquid morphine from this guy, and he was stealing it from his wife. She was dying. I knew that, but I didn't care because I had been so low, and I just wanted to be okay. And I would jump in dumpsters to get metal out. I would just do whatever I had to do, and I didn't care about nothing or nobody. Anyways, I got back to my house that Sunday afternoon, and my mom's car was in the driveway, and I'm so delusional, I don't say my mom's car was in the driveway, I say it looked like my mom's car. So in my mind, I can't imagine why she would be there. You know, there was no reason for her to be there at all. Anyways, I go in, and my mom is there, my brother's there, the one that went to rehab when I was 20, and my cousin's there, and somebody else is there. And they said, "I think you got a problem." And I told my mom, and I talked to her recently, and she said, "I told her, I've got this handled, don't worry about it." And so she said, "We want you to come back to Rutherford with us." And I said, "I don't want to come back to Rutherford." And she said, "Well, if you won't come back to Rutherford, I'm going to stay here with you." And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because it's okay for me to sleep on this little tin mattress and the dirty floor. It's not okay for my mom. And so this place that I was staying, y'all, when I went to sleep at night, I slept with my hands in my pockets. I slept with my blue jeans on and my hands in my pockets so that people could steal my stuff from me. And it was everything. I mean, they'd steal your driver's license from me. anyways, sorry about that. So she said, come back to Rutherford, and I said, no, and she said, I'll stay here, and so that kind of hit me hard, so I go into negotiation mode, and, so I told me, because you remember, I just got back from seeing my guy, so that's gonna happen. And so I said, well, I had a truck, I still had a truck at this point. That's all I had, a truck, and I thought I was hot shit, I had a truck. Anyways, I said, have my brother take my truck back to Rutherford, and then I'll get my cousin to bring me down there tomorrow. And they was like, all right. Seems like that's what happened. Anyways, I went down there on, my cousin took me down there on Monday, and I was down there on Monday, and I was just trying to not be sick. Just drinking a little bit, wherever I had to do, just trying to be not feeling like crap. And so on Tuesday, nothing's happening. And so I went to my mom on Tuesday, and I was like, what's y'all's plan? Y'all got me down here to Rutherford. What's the plan? She said, I don't know. When that marriage split up, we bought a trailer from this guy, and I've done some work for that guy for a couple months after that marriage split up before I went to Charlotte. And after 5 years, his phone number popped into my head, and I remembered that he had been in AA. And so his phone number popped in my head, all 10 digits of it. And so I told my mom, I was like, hey, call this number and ask this guy if there's an AA meeting around. And so she called him. She said, yeah, there's an AA meeting on Thursday night at the Catholic Church at 8 o'clock in our city. I was like, all right, I'm going to go to that. And so I kept doing what I was doing, and then I woke up on Thursday morning, and I said, I'm going to be completely stone cold sober when I go to this meeting at 8 o'clock. So I didn't do anything all day long. No drinking, no alcohol, no drugs, no dry goods, nothing. I thought I was going to be top notch when I got there. It was like Raiders sharp. That's the way I imagined it happened in my mind. Later they told me they thought I was going to die in the parking lot. They thought I was so bad. Anyways, I went to that meeting, and I have no idea what they talked about. But after that meeting was over, I went outside, and some people gave me their phone number. This is in 2009. So I imagine they wrote it down on something. And anyways, I left there, and it was 9 o'clock at night, 9-ish. And so I said, well, I've made it all day. I'm going to try to go the rest of the day. So I'll wake up Friday morning. So, and I made it all the way through. I woke up Friday morning. I don't know where I woke up, but my next conscious thought was that I was at my grandmother's house, and I'd been 24 hours without any type of mind, mood altering substance at all. And I was laying on my grandmother's couch, and I had my head in her lap, and I was crying like a baby because I don't know. I have no idea how to navigate life at all. And so I called them numbers that they gave me the night before, and I got a hold of this guy, and his name was Rick, and he only had one arm. Some of y'all might know him. It sounded like when I called him, he was driving a straight drive and drinking coffee, smoking cigarettes, and talking to me on the phone all at one time. But what he told me was, he's like, you need to get a detox. I didn't know what detox was. I don't know nothing. So he was in Cleveland County, and I was in Rutherford County. And he said, call Pathways. So, Cleveland County, that apparently is some kind of rehab type situation. In Rutherford County, it's about a women's shelter. And I called them, and I gave them the spiel, I'm bad off, I need help, I need to get a detox. They're like, sir, you got the wrong number. Like, what do you think I should do? And they're like, call this number. And I called that number. Like, you got the wrong number. They said, call this number. And I kept doing it. That's the amazing thing right there. I kept doing it. And then somebody said, you need to go to Party Hospital in Hendersonville. Tell me you'll be at NADAC. And my mom got off work, and she took me up to Party Hospital. And I sat out in the waiting room for about 13 hours. And it was rough. It was brutal. And they finally got me to the back, and I was in the back for several hours, maybe 2 or 3 hours. And they finally got me in bed, and she took me up to ADAC in Black Mountain and dropped me off at detox. But yeah, that's where the journey kind of started there. And when I got through with detox, I was there for 7 days. And I remember 2 things that was kind of powerful for me. One thing is that I had a headache, and I remember thinking, like, I wonder if I've had this headache for 2 years and just didn't know it. I was out of it for so long. And I also remember I was barefooted, and I stood on this rug, and I remember feeling that rug on the bottom of my feet. And I was like, I hadn't felt nothing in so long. I just remember that rug was underneath my feet, and I could feel the texture of it. And that was pretty amazing to me. And I don't know why it sticks out to me. It was very powerful. Anyway, at the end of 7 days, they told me I could stay for rehab because they have a detox and a rehab program. But I didn't. And so I went home. They said go to plenty of meetings and go to, they call it IOP, it's intensive outpatient. I didn't know what it was. It's like group. So I was going to a meeting every single day. And I was going to this intensive outpatient, which is I guess like group therapy for recovery or something like that. Anyways, that was 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, from 9 a.m. to 12. And then before that and after that, I was going to meetings. You know, I was hitting meetings every single day because I was really trying my best. I wanted to get better. So what happened to me is I done that for about 4 months, and then at the end of that 4 months, I relapsed. And because nothing really changed, nothing really different. I was going and sitting at a table like this, and I was saying I was an alcoholic, and the truth is I didn't even know what an alcoholic was. You know, I come and sit around the table and said I was an alcoholic. I knew I had a problem, I just didn't know what the problem was. So I relapsed, and I stayed out for about 2 weeks, and then I got myself well enough to start going back to meetings again. And this lady, Brenda, just said you absolutely have to do the step work. It's the only thing that's going to help you. And so I got with my sponsor, this guy named Jonathan, and he said, I asked him if he'd take me through the steps, and he said, well, let's do an investigation and find out if you're even an alcoholic. And so we done an investigation, and you know what I found out was that when I started drinking, I have little or no control over the amount I take in. And even some times that I was able to stop for a little bit, I didn't have no control over if I started back or not. I mean, I was just absolute chaos on my own life. And so when I realized that that's what an alcoholic was, it's just somebody that once they start, they can't stop, no matter how bad you want to. And I had that experience, you know. I had an experience. I heard them say that, but it didn't really resonate with me until I had that relapse. And then I had that relapse, and I was like, that's what they're talking about right there. I have no control. This is not of me. I don't have any control over this. And so, you know, we looked at the steps, and he said, you know, I think you are. I admitted I was an alcoholic. I admitted that to my innermost self for the first time ever. And I finally knew what an alcoholic was. So I qualified myself, and so he took me through the book, Alcoholics Anonymous. And we done the step work, and he told me right away, he said, you know, if it's in the book, you got to do it. And if it's not in the book, it's my opinion, and that means absolutely nothing. It don't mean anything. And I'm glad he told me that, because every time something hard come up, I wanted to go to him and him tell me how to fix it. I didn't realize that that's not what's up. I gotta have a relationship with a higher power. And I've gotta be able to look at my own problems and figure, I mean, the answers are inside of me. The book tells me that. I just gotta be able to access that, right? But I don't know how to access it. So, I mean, if it was as easy as get a relationship with God, I would have done that the first time that I quit, when I went and I threw myself into church. I have to have it broke down in 12 increments for me to develop a relationship with God. It sounds crazy, but that's how hard it is for me. It's the hardest thing I do is trust in God, and it's the most rewarding thing I do. But in that process, I've done a 4-step, and I've done it out of the book. And I learned so much about myself and about the way I treated other people. And, really when I got through with that 4-step, I looked at it and I thought, man, if they treated me the way I treated them, I mean, I don't know what I would have done, because I was just a horrible person. I didn't care about nothing or nobody but myself. I was very selfish. They told me that in the meeting that I didn't believe it. When I wrote out a 4-step, it was in my own handwriting. And I was very selfish, self-centered, and I was full of fear. And then I went to when I got ready to do my 5th step, I had this thing in my mind. It was like this huge thing, and I was like, I said it years ago, I'm never telling anybody that. And I put it on the very top, because I knew when I went to my sponsor's house, if I didn't start right there, I would not do it. And I started right there, and this big thing, trying to kill me, and that I don't want to deal with, and I don't want to look at. And I told my sponsor, and he's like, yeah, me too. I'm like, really? Wow. I'm just like, okay. So, we get on into the steps, and after I done that 5th step, I was 35 years old, and that was the first time in my life that I had ever had a connection with another human being. That was a real, genuine connection. I didn't want nothing from him, and he didn't want nothing from me. I've been married, and I didn't feel that connection with my wife. That was the first time ever I had a human relationship. And I also realized, I'm just one of everybody else. I always thought I was so different, so alone. I just didn't fit in. I just didn't belong. And I just found out that I'm just a regular person doing, just not knowing how to deal with life. And we went on through the process, and I, we got to 9, and that was really, that was a really hard step for me, because you don't stay as awkward as I was for as long as I was without stepping on toes. And there were people I had to go to, and the book tells me, we're more for mumbling that we're sorry, or won't feel good at all. And they must have knew I was coming along, because I would love to give a remorse for mumbling that I'm sorry and go on with it. But I had to take the money, and when I first got sober, I wasn't employed. I was scratching and clawing for every penny I had. And the people I stole from, I had to take the money. Like devastating amounts, like $90. Like, oh my God, I'm going to go from this. But I've done it. And then sometimes I call people, and they said, don't ever call me again. Yep. And I was like, oh, that's how I'm going to make that amends. I'm not going to ever call that person again. And I haven't. And then, we seek through prayer and meditation. And that was, for a long time, that was my favorite step. And I got to read all kinds of cool books and really seek. And then we get to help others. And that's one of the things that my whole life I had never tried to just help anybody. Ever. Not one time. Not without some kind of selfish motive. It just never happened. And so when I get here, and y'all are telling me to pray and meditate and help others, I'm like, what does that have to do with this man's son? It's like that. To me, that I can't even comprehend that when I first get here. What I found out is absolutely true. When I can go help somebody, sometimes it's just me reading a book to them until they can get away from me and go drink again. You tell me you want help, I'm going to try. I got to, because that was something my sponsor told me in the beginning. He's like, are you willing to go to any lengths? I said, yeah, before I even knew what any lengths was. What he told me any lengths was, he said, when somebody asked you to take them through this work, take them through this work. And I said, okay. I was sick, I was bad, and I didn't want to die. For whatever reason, I didn't want to die. But since that time, I have become employed. I have a job, and I'll tell you this, that baby, that woman that got pregnant, and that baby, it was my baby, had a DNA test. And when that baby was 4 years old, I was 3 years sober. And she called me and said, come to IHOP on Cox Road And I got there and she said, I can't do this. She handed me that baby. He was 4 years old. I took him home, and he went to the same school every year, except for when we moved one time, except for when it's necessary to move up to the next, middle school, and now to go to high school. I gave him a lot that I don't feel like I had. And them things didn't make me an alcoholic. What made me an alcoholic was my inability to control my consumption of alcohol. What makes me an alcoholic? What makes alcoholics alcoholics? But, I feel like I've given him a better life. I've had the same job for, it'll be 9 years in October. And so, me trying my very best, and I'm talking about going to meetings, going to group therapy, giving people rides to me, not knowing what I'm doing, but trying to do the best right thing. I'm able to stay sober for 4 months. I've been sober for 13 years, and I'm not capable of staying sober for 13 years. I'm capable of staying sober for 4 months if I wanted more than anything else in this whole life world. So, my life looks like I have a good relationship with a fellow alcoholic, and we're raising that kid. That kid is 14 years old. He'll be in high school this year coming up. I hope he's not like me, but if he is, I want there to be a chair at a table somewhere like this where he can come and sit down if he has the same problem I have. I don't know if he will, if he won't. But, life is pretty good. I wake up at 3:15 in the morning to go to work at 4:30. It's not like luxury or lottery winning life or nothing like that, but it's regular, normal people, everyday things I should have been doing when I was 20 years old. But I was so afraid of everything, and I was trying to run with this voice in my head, and I couldn't get away from it. No matter how fast I run or how far I run, I could not get away from it. And so when I finally got here, and I was able to look at that stuff, and I can remember, I'll tell you this, and then I'll wind her up. I remember sitting with my sponsor, and it was his car, and he was driving, and I was in the passenger seat, we were at a red light. And I can remember thinking, how does me writing down my resentments, doing a fourth step, how does me writing that down, how does that remove my desire to drink? Because it was baffling me. Like, how does that happen? Because it happened like that. I done this step, and I was driving my truck, and I was like, I haven't thought about it in 2 weeks. Like, I don't understand this, and I still don't understand it. I don't understand it. But I have had an experience with it, and I tell people that if they say they want help, and I'll tell them, like, what I've done, I don't know how it works. Like, I don't believe God. Like, that's fine, I pray anyways. You know what I mean? It'll get better. It's free. So, it's just one of those things. This program, this book, these steps, they are an absolute miracle. And I think the building somewhere in the writing calls it a wholesale miracle. This is the way that people can get better if they want to get better. And if you're not there yet, maybe you won't ever have to be there. But I know that I had to be at a certain level of desperation before I would do this, and Bill talks about that as well. It's like, no alcoholic wants to do this. And I'm that alcoholic, I don't want to do this. But today, whenever I start getting uncomfortable, I'm not okay. I don't feel pain very well today. So when I start getting uncomfortable, I know I got to reach out to somebody, I got to pray, I got to meditate. I got to do the things that I've been taught in this program to do to make me okay. And as long as I keep doing that, so far, everything's worked out great. I don't see no reason why it wouldn't work out that way forever. But that's all I have, so thank y'all.
I'm Sally, and I'm an alcoholic.
Sally.
You did a great job. Thank you for keeping your tent shaking husband on. So very, very good.